there, my darlings, and welcome to this very special Phone Debbie episode. Tonight, I'm going to be joined by two listeners who will call in and share their stories with us. The fire is crackling, the moon is full, and I'm all ready to listen to these stories. Now, first up, we're expecting a call from Kristen from Los Angeles. Oh, that must be her now. Hello, Deadly Debbie's residence. Oh, hello, Kristen. Let me put you on loudspeaker, dear, and you can share your story with all of us. Go ahead.
My name is Kristen, and the first paranormal encounter I experienced happened in the early 2000s. I, at the time, had just started my first career in tech and was living in Silicon Valley down in Santa Clara, and had made some plans to visit with a college friend who had lived in Larkspur, which is in Marin County up in the Bay Area of California. For those of you who aren't familiar with that area, it's very lush, a lot of residential into the landscape of a lot of trees, very forest-like. So this friend of mine, Greg, he lived in a little cabin on a larger property. And you could tell the moment you drove along this sort of gravel dirt path to get to this little cabin of his, that it had a lot of history. You can just tell when a structure has seen some days, and this was one of those. And, we connect and settle in, and I notice a coffee table book in his front room, and he opens it up. It's the history of Larkspur. And he opens up this very thick book to a page that looks like his cottage in the middle of the woods back in the, early 1900s, perhaps. And who's standing in front of this cottage looked like help to a larger estate on the property. And I felt like a couple kids there, if I recall correctly. But clearly this little establishment was the help quarters, dare I say slaves. It feels icky to say that, but that's what this home looked like. And it was very quaint. It wasn't big at all. It had one main room and then the kitchen next to it, and then an offshoot to the bedroom and a bathroom. So very small, perfect bachelor pad for exactly what it was used for currently. Cut to, where we go out to dinner, have a good time. It is far too long of a drive for me to head the hour and a half, 2 hour drive back to where I live in Santa Clara. So I just decide I'm going to just stay the night, especially after having had a drink or two. So, it's late. We go to bed, and all of a sudden it kind of sounds like someone is taking a 2x4 and just whapping it against the side of this cottage. And it's startling. You don't know what it is. It's very disconcerting. We turn the lights on. My friend Greg has a flashlight he grabs. He opens up the front door. I don't know why I felt panicked. I grabbed the phone and I had 9 and a 1. It felt very startling, like someone was trying to break in. And here he is just busting open the front door with his flashlight and looking around the cottage. Doesn't take very long because it's very small. Comes back in, says he doesn't see anything, closes the door, locks it, turns all the lights off. We go back to sleep. And then it starts happening again. It happens consistently all night, like where the moment you turn the lights off, it was almost like we were being taunted. And I have never experienced this before. I'm very rattled. I don't feel comfortable. The other sort of detail to mention here is that he didn't have any window coverings. So the moment you turn the lights on, you feel like you're being looked at, from the outside, that whatever is outside can see you clear as day from the inside, but you cannot see anything from the outside because it's pitch black. Like I said, it's kind of nestled into big trees. There's no ambient light from street lights or other neighboring homes. It's very dark, very secluded. And if I think I was in a suburb, I would have jumped into my car and drove straight home. But I felt very landlocked, and I wanted to call the police. And, my friend Greg was like, no, I'm sure, it's nothing. And I'm like, do you have friends playing a horrible joke on you? This is not funny. We turned all the lights off because it's actually a little bit more comforting, like I said, not to have the feeling that someone's staring in at you. He actually, when the point at which he got scared, because he's a very funny person, keeps everything very lighthearted. And there was a moment, maybe a couple hours into the night, where this was just happening very regularly, that he started stomping his feet on the ground and yelling at whatever it is to go away. And I think that's where I started to panic a little bit and thought, oh gosh, okay, so now the person who seemed to have it together is beginning to panic himself. And I should mention, like, just before that, he had put on some funny shirt that, he was trying to like keep it light, and I forget what it said, but he was like, I'm here to protect you or whatever. And I'm like, that's funny, not funny because what's happening. But anyhow, progressively through the night, the pounding on the home was getting louder and louder, to the point where the cottage was kind of rumbling and shaking. And that to me was, it didn't feel like anyone, like a physical body, being able to do that, because it seemed sort of superhuman, is what I would say. It felt like the whole cabin was just being rattled, and you couldn't tell where it was coming from. And as I'm retelling this story, I have the goosebumps because it was a very frigid energy, whatever it was, very bitter, unsettled. It didn't feel like it was coming from a particular place in the house. It felt like the entire structure was just being shaken. And that to me also signified that this was not a person. It was some kind of energetic entity. And I just remember these thoughts so clearly in my head that I was laying on the bed, and I thought, you know what, if this is my time to go, I've lived a very fulfilled life. And I've never in my life, at that point in time, I was, in my mid-20s, perhaps. I've never had that kind of scare or sensation that I might die, but that's where I was mentally. I literally thought this was the end of life. Like, it felt that threatening. It felt out of control. Like, there was nothing we could do to fix it. I don't know why. I think we were so scared out of our minds that, like, 911 it was not even our heads anymore, because I feel like in the very moment that it was happening, it felt like that wouldn't do anything, and I think in moments like that, when you really feel like your life is being compromised, I feel like the crux of that experience for me was like just going to a place of love. And I think we were so scared out of our minds, we started holding each other and kissed. And like, it stopped. It was the weirdest thing in the world. That's, to me, it was like we just sort of like salvaged into each other, and it stopped. And by then, when I say it stopped, the sun was starting to come up. That's how long it had been happening. I think if I had to put a time frame on it, it was probably like 1:32 in the morning to about 5:36 that there was this progressive like rattling and shaking. And when the sun started cracking over the horizon, or just coming through the trees, I jumped into my car and I was out of there. I was like, see ya. Like, I don't know what that was. And so, I think after sort of decompressing from that experience, I think the next day we had talked to each other, and I said, what was that? And my friend Greg was like, that was Thumper. I'm like, I'm sorry. He's like, it was a bunny. It was a bunny in the bungalow. And I'm like, that was no bunny. He's like, I have to live here. It was a bunny. We never really talked about it after that for several years, until he had a live-in girlfriend. And I think I mean, it's always stayed with me, 20 years later. God, I'm a little shaky telling the story, but I remember bringing it up to him several years later when he had a living girlfriend, and I said, "Do you remember that crazy night?" He's like, "How could I forget?" And he told me about how he had gone to work and his girlfriend was just waking up one morning. She thought he was still home because she saw something go across the doorway. And when she called out his name, he wasn't there. And she realized that, like, they both had sort of acknowledged that there was an essence left over in this home. To this day, it's not clear to either one of us what that was, but it's definitely a story that stayed with me ever since, because I've just never experienced anything like it before.
Now, who do we have next? Ah, yes, Johnathan from Oklahoma. Is that Johnathan? Oh, excellent. Go ahead, darling, and tell everyone your story.
Well, hello, my name is Johnathan, and this is pretty much the first experience I probably had with anything paranormal. And I was around the age 12 or 13. It was maybe the first or second year me and my family moved into a new house. And so the previous owner was an older woman. I never knew her, never talked to her, so I have no idea about her history. But my first experience happened one night. It may have been a school night, may have been the weekend, not sure. But it was probably in the middle of the night when this happened. I have no idea if something shook me, there was a sound, but all I know is I remember just waking up. And when I opened my eyes, I'm staring just at the ceiling, and then eventually my eyes just lock on to this figure standing at the foot of my bed. And this person is wearing some type of hat, and it looks like he's wearing some type of long coat, like a raincoat possibly. I always thought this person was wearing rain gear, like he was out in the rain, but I don't believe it was raining that night. And I just remember, like, as soon as I saw this person, you couldn't figure out any details, just the silhouette. It looked like just a dark mass, like a void, like there was just no details. And like he could have had his back turned, but it did feel like it was like staring right at me, even though I couldn't see any eyes or any features of the face. When I saw this person, I remember just freezing, like I was just petrified for, I don't know how long. It could have been seconds, but it felt like a long time. And as soon as I worked up any courage, I was able to grab my blankets and pull them over my head. And I was only under there just a few minutes, but it feels like hours when you're just scared. And I didn't know what to do, but I got some more courage, and I was able to pull the blankets off my head. And I was looking at the foot of my bed, and this person was gone. And I was just scanning my room, making sure this person wasn't hiding. I never looked under my bed because you never know. And I worked up even more courage to run to my light switch and turn it on. And I just stayed awake in my bed, just hoping what I saw was just a dream. But it felt so real, just the atmosphere. It was just like when you get scared in a scary movie, that's exactly like when you're truly scared, that's exactly what it felt like. And I never told anyone about it, but I do recall my sister telling me a story that's very similar to that one, where when she was young, she didn't tell me how old she was, but I'm assuming she had to have been a teenager because she was staying at my grandmother's house. And she was staying in the guest bedroom, and she had looked into one of the windows, and outside she saw a man who was also wearing a hat and like a raincoat, and it was actually raining outside. And she told me she got really scared, and she went and grabbed my uncle who was staying there at the time, and he went outside, ran out there to see who was out there, and there was no one out there. There was no footprints. There was no signs of anyone ever standing outside the window. And I'm pretty sure my sister stayed awake the rest of the night too. But that's the only connection me and her have when it comes to that. It's not something that me and my sister have brought up to our family yet. I've been kind of trying to just figure it out on my own. I tried seeing what history was, where my parents' house was, and really couldn't find anything about it. And then where my grandma's house is, I'm not sure what history is there. So after that experience me and my sister both had, and that's not the last paranormal experience that's ever happened to me. The next story is a little more out there. It started when I was around 21 years old. I was in college, and I was just going to school, studying as much as I could, and I was hanging out with some friends. My friend Rachel and my friend Brandon, and we were just hanging out at Rachel's house, and we found out about this weird event going on called a zombie walk. And it was Halloween weekend. What a zombie walk is basically a big group of people will throw on makeup, dress themselves up as zombies, and we would walk around like a block, or in this case it was downtown in a place called Bricktown, and we would just walk a few blocks. Well, we didn't know what time it started. We just assumed it was going to be an all-day thing. Well, we got all our makeup on, looking like zombies. Not very good zombies. We weren't very convincing. We got to this place and realized no one was dressed as zombies, and we were just the only ones that had any sort of Halloween makeup on, and so we were walking around just kind of the oddballs there. But I had brought my camera so I could film and take pictures of everything. As we were walking, we made it to this parking lot to take a rest, and both of my friends decided they wanted to do a little photo shoot, and so I was like, okay. And so they stood kind of about 20 feet away from me, and I got on my knees to take a picture because the sky looked really cool, and I was like, it'd be really cool to get this, just the sky in the background. And so they posed, and I took a picture. I tend to take a couple of pictures, that way at least one of them might turn out good. And as I was looking through those pictures, right after I took it, I noticed that there was a strange blue looking light up in the sky. I didn't really think much of it. I just thought it was probably a plane flying by. But as I zoomed in closer, it didn't really look like a plane at all. It had kind of like a ring shape, and like two separate ring shapes almost interlocking each other into a ball shape. The best way I can describe what it looked like is from a photo that I saw years later of Ezekiel's wheel from the Bible. That's probably the closest thing that it looked like. It didn't look like that blue light was coming right off of this craft or whatever it was, but as I zoomed into the picture, I had to adjust the brightness. That way I could see if I could figure out more details on it. And as I upped the brightness, I noticed that there was another, like, some type of craft a little bit further away. This one was harder to tell. All you could see was just a small little metallic looking piece. Like, there was just no detail, but you knew there was something else that was a little bit further away. I saw that, and I've never seen a UFO or anything before like that, and I still look to the sky and hoping maybe I'll catch a glimpse of whatever I saw. Maybe it'll fly by again. After I saw this craft, I didn't tell anyone. I kind of just kept it to myself because I wasn't sure on what I saw. My friends, they're very open to paranormal things. They probably would have been very accepting of it if I told them. But that same night, after our time dressed as zombies, we went back to her house, and we got all of our zombie makeup off, and we were just chatting in her living room, talking about paranormal stuff, like we usually do. And Brandon was like, my house is haunted. We should go see if we can find anything. And me and Rachel were like, oh, yeah, of course. Like, we weren't scared or anything. We've been always talking about going ghost hunting. And so we head over to Brandon's house, and no one's home. It was just him and us. And it was around, I'd say 2 a.m. And we decided just to walk around with the camera. He told us, I don't remember exactly I don't think he ever said what happened in his house. But we decided to just walk around his house to see if anything would happen. After probably about 30 minutes of walking, just talking out loud, asking if anyone was there, and being silent to see if we can hear noises, we didn't get anything. And so we just decided to sit in his living room and just talk. And then we started to hear this sound. It was a very high-pitched sound, like a tapping sound. It sounded as if someone was tapping their fingernail on a table or some type of glass. And we were trying to figure out where this sound was coming from. And we were looking around, because it didn't sound like it was coming from one spot. And so we were just looking around, and we just thought, it's probably a branch on a window, and it's hitting the window. Well, we went outside and checked all the windows, and there's no trees near a window. And there was nothing by any of the windows that would make a tapping sound. And so we went back inside, and I decided to turn on my camera so I could capture this sound, we could figure it out. So we walked through his dining room, which connects to his kitchen, because we thought the sound was coming from the kitchen. And as we got in there, we were checking every cabinet to see if any of the appliances were maybe making this tapping sound. But we kept hearing it. It was a very constant tap, almost like a metronome, but it was with tapping on the table. And then as we went back into the living room, we passed through the dining room, and it sounded like that sound was coming from the dining room. And so we were in the dining room looking around, and his table is a glass table. And we're like, there's no way that's it. But we put our ears closer to the table and found out that this sound was coming right from this table, but nothing was tapping it, nothing was around it. There was nothing just hanging, hitting it, and the tapping was just very consistent. I was filming all this, and then all of a sudden the sound just stopped. For no reason. We weren't trying to communicate or talk. We were just listening. And after it stopped, we were just really kind of just stunned, looking at each other. And they kept asking me if I got it on camera. I was like, yes, I was filming the whole time. And so I rewound the tape, and I was playing it back on my camera. And sure enough, you can hear that tapping sound. And so we figured, well, let's go to the computer, get it on the computer, and see if we can maybe pinpoint what it was, or maybe see if there's anything on the camera that I caught other than the sound. We could tell that the video was uploading onto the computer, and the file, it was finally done. It probably took 10 minutes to get the file. When we clicked the file on the computer, the file said it was corrupted, and we're like, oh, well, I'm going to have to import it again. And so I grabbed my camera, rewound the tape again, and now the tape is all corrupted. It's like when you're watching an old VHS tape and there's just so much just static and like it can't get a clear image, like it's just a bunch of just, like you messed up the tape somehow. Well, we tried to import it again. Maybe we thought it was just the camera. Well, same thing happened when we clicked on it, and it said corrupt file, and the tape was pretty much just, you couldn't hear anything, you couldn't see anything anymore. And I even took the tape out of the camera, examined it, and there was no scratches, there was nothing wrong with it. I've used the tape over the past few years and it works just fine. We have no idea why the tape malfunctioned, why the computer malfunctioned. Maybe it was whatever making that sound decided to interfere with our electronics because it didn't want us to see. The tapping sound? Yeah, we're... See, I don't think... We were trying to debunk it in any way we could. And we were just trying to... Like, paranormal was probably the last thing we were trying to say it was. We were just trying to make sure it wasn't something very practical, like a tree branch hitting a window or some type of string hanging or something.
Well, that's it for tonight, kiddies. And if you have a strange, creepy, true story to share, do send it in to us. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and you can email us on deadlydebbie@mail.com. You can also choose to tell your story yourself on one of our special phone-in episodes. See you all next week.